Some storms come from the sky. Others live inside us. The blizzard that swept through the Wyoming mountains that night was supposed to be just another winter storm. But for Ethan Cole, a retired police officer, with more scars inside than out, it became the night everything changed. He found them in the snow, a little girl unconscious, and a German shepherd lying across her like a shield. They should have been dead. But when he touched the girl's wrist, he felt a faint pulse, steady, mechanical, impossible. He took them home. He saved them. And somehow, they began to save him back. But healing has a price. The child's strange, calm gaze, the way the dog watched the door, as if expecting soldiers. None of it was coincidence. They weren't lost. They were escaping. And soon, the men who'd created her would come to reclaim what they thought was theirs. Only then would Ethan realize, sometimes family isn't something you're born into. It's something you fight for. The wind howled through the pines like something alive, wild, merciless, and ancient. Snow fell in blinding sheets, erasing the world beyond 10 paces. Ethan Cole pulled his scarf higher over his mouth, breath burning in his chest as he trudged through the white wilderness. His rifle hung forgotten at his side. He hadn't fired a shot all day. He wasn't hunting for elk anymore. Not really. He was chasing silence, trying to outrun the ghosts that waited in the stillness. The blizzard roared harder, pressing against him like a living wool. His boots crunched through drifts waist-deep in places, and every gust carried the sharp tang of pine resin and ice. The cold bit into his skin, numbing the edges of his thoughts. For a brief moment, that was a relief. Out here, he wasn't Sergeant Cole. He wasn't the man who saw his K-9 partner torn apart during a raid gone wrong. Out here, he was just another creature, fighting to stay warm. Then he saw it. A streak of red against white. At first, he thought it was nothing. A trick of the light. A flash of rust from the old hunting trail markers, half buried under snow. But when he crouched down, his stomach turned. Blood. Fresh. A trail winding from the tree line toward the open meadow below. Ethan's pulse quickened, combat instincts flaring to life. Blood in this kind of cold meant only two things. Something had died recently, or something was dying right now. He adjusted his headlamp, squinting against the wind. The beam caught fragments of color amid the snow. Torn fabric, small footprints, paw prints beside them. Too small for elk. Too human to ignore. "Hello?" he shouted, voice swallowed, instantly by the storm. "Is anyone out here?" No answer. Just the groaning trees and the scream of the wind. He followed the trail, boots sinking deep. The prints staggered, collapsed, then dragged. And then, he saw her. At the base of an old spruce, half buried beneath a drift, a little girl lay curled on her side, snow crusted over her hair, her lips blue. Her arms were wrapped around the neck of a German shepherd, its dark coat dusted white, its body trembling weakly against her. The dog's eyes fluttered open at the sound of Ethan's approach, a soft growl rumbling deep in its chest. A warning even from the edge of death. Ethan dropped to his knees, heart hammering. "Easy, boy. Easy." He reached out slowly, letting the animal catch his scent. "I'm here to help." The dog's growl faded to a whimper. Its chest rose and fell shallowly, blood matting the fur near its ribs. The girl didn't move. "God!" Ethan's voice cracked. He brushed the snow from her face. She couldn't have been more than 6. Pale skin, lashes like frost, a streak of crimson across her temple where she must have fallen. Training took over. He checked her pulse. Faint, but there. He tore off his gloves, rubbing warmth into her tiny hands. Come on, kid. Don't you give up on me now. Static crackled as he pulled his radio from his jacket. Base, this is Cole. I have 2 survivors. 1 child, 1 canine. Severe hypothermia. Possible trauma. Coordinates, nothing. Just a wall of white noise. He tried again. Base, come in! Only the wind answered. The mountains ate his signal whole. Ethan stared down at the pair, heart pounding. He was 20 miles from home, 5 from his cabin. No help coming. No time to think. Times 8 hums. He slipped his arms under the girl's limp body, surprised at how light she was. Weightless, almost. The dog whined weakly as Ethan tried to move it. All right, partner, he muttered, voice trembling. You're coming too. He wrapped the dog in his spare jacket, slinging its weight against his shoulder, and tucked the girl's inside his coat, close to his chest. Her head lolled against him, ice crystals melting into his beard. Step by step, he pushed through the storm. The world shrank to the crunch of snow beneath his boots, the weight in his arms, the deafening roar of the wind. But as he walked, the storm wasn't just outside. It was inside him, too. Flashes came, shards of memory slicing through the dark. A flashbang explosion, a canine barking, the smell of cordite and blood, his partner screaming, "Get down, Ethan!" Then silence. Always. The silence after. He blinked hard, forcing himself back into the present. Not there. Not then. Here. Now. A child in his arms. A dog on his back. Lives depending on him again. When the cabin's outline finally appeared through the storm, just a blur of shadow against white, Ethan almost didn't believe it was real. His legs shook with exhaustion. He kicked the door open with his boot, stumbling inside as the warmth of the wood stove hit him like a wall. Snow scattered across the floor as he lowered the girl onto a blanket, then eased the dog down beside her. The shepherd gave a low groan, eyes fluttering open once before closing again. "Stay with me, buddy," Ethan said hoarsely, already tearing through drawers for supplies. Towels, blankets, anything. He worked fast. Towels on the stove, warm water in a bowl, his breath fogging the air. He stripped the soaked clothing from the girl's tiny body, wrapping her in heat, and whispering to her like she could hear him. "You're safe now. You're safe." Minutes bled into hours. He fed her sips of water from his palm, massaged her hands and feet to bring color back. When her body shuddered, he felt hope surge. The dog's breathing deepened too, slow but steady. The blizzard raged outside, rattling the windows like artillery fire. Each gust triggered echoes in his head, flashbacks of chaos and command radios. But he anchored himself to the moment, to the fragile rhythm of 2 heartbeats that weren't his own. Finally, near midnight, he collapsed beside them, exhaustion overtaking him. The girl stirred faintly, a whisper escaping her lips. "Don't let them find us," Ethan froze. The words were so soft he wasn't sure he'd heard them at all. He glanced around the cabin, shadows moving across the walls from the firelight. Outside, the storm roared on, covering all traces of their trail. "Wolves?" he murmured, half to himself. But something in the way she said it, the edge of terror beneath it, lodged in his chest like a shard of ice. He sat back, staring at her small face. Whatever this was, whoever she wasn't just lost. He reached out, brushing damp hair from her forehead, his calloused hand trembling. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something stir beneath the armor of numbness. A purpose, a flicker of warmth, not born from the fire. Outside, the storm screamed on. Inside, a broken man guarded two fragile lives he didn't yet understand. But in saving them, he'd already begun to save himself. The storm battered the cabin like a living thing, each gust hammering against the wooden walls with a low, guttural roar. The windows rattled in their frames, the glass fogged by the contrast of howling frost outside and the fragile warmth within. Ethan Cole moved mechanically, guided by instinct and training. Feed the fire. Keep the body temperature up. Check the breathing. Don't stop moving. The girl lay swaddled in layers of towels and blankets near the hearth. Her lips had regained a hint of color, though her skin still looked almost translucent in the flickering firelight. The dog, Rex, as he'd started calling him, was curled at her side, the rise and fall of his chest steady now but shallow. Every so often, his paws twitched, as if running through some dream only animals understood. Ethan crouched beside them, exhaustion in every motion. His hands were cracked and raw, his knuckles bleeding from the cold. But when he brushed a stray lock of hair from the girl's forehead, a strange calm settled over him. He'd seen enough death to recognize when something fought to stay alive. And she, this tiny, half-frozen stranger, was fighting with a quiet, stubborn will. He stirred the fire again, adding another log. Sparks rose and danced, vanishing into the black chimney throat. For a while he just watched them, lost in the simple rhythm of it. The warmth licked against his skin, reminding him that he was still here, still breathing. The cabin was small. One main room, a loft above, the faint smell of pine sap and gun oil in the air. His rifle leaned against the wall, mud-stained boots by the door, a stack of notebooks cluttering the table. He'd come here to escape people, noise, the relentless world. He'd built this place with his own hands to keep everything out. Yet tonight, life had forced its way in through the storm. Two heartbeats that now anchored him to something he hadn't felt in years: responsibility. A soft sound broke the silence. The girl stirred. Her lips moved. Ethan leaned closer, thinking she might be waking, but her eyes stayed closed, her voice a fragile whisper barely audible over the wind. "Don't let them find us." He froze. The words carried that same note of dread he'd heard earlier, a tremor so real it scraped against something inside him. "Wolves," he murmured, glancing toward the shuttered windows where the snow slapped like ghostly hands. "You're safe here, kid." But even as he said it, doubt crawled at the back of his mind. There was something in her tone, not fear of animals, but fear of people. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on checking her pulse again. Warm. Steady. That was all that mattered tonight. Still, the unease clung to him. He poured himself coffee from the tin kettle on the stove, the bitter taste grounding him. Then he sat in the old recliner opposite the fire, shoulders heavy, staring at the pair by the hearth. The room blurred. The rhythm of the storm faded into something else, the hum of a helicopter, the echo of boots on concrete. And suddenly, he was back there. A flash of red light, the metallic stench of blood and cordite. His K9 partner, Max, lunging through a doorway just before the explosion. Ethan's voice tearing through the comms. "Max, come back!" Then the deafening roar that swallowed everything. He remembered crawling through the smoke, hands torn, lungs burning, only to find a piece of the dog's collar half buried in the rubble. He had carried that collar in his pocket for years. He could still feel its ghost weight now, though it wasn't there. The dream memory broke with a crash of thunder outside. Ethan jerked awake, breath ragged, sweat cold on his neck. The coffee mug lay on the floor, its contents bleeding into the wood grain. "Easy," he muttered to himself, forcing a slow breath. Easy, Cole. You're not there. He looked to the fire. Leah. He'd decided that was her name. She needed one. Was still asleep, her face peaceful, almost unnaturally so. The dog stirred beside her, pressing closer as the wind howled. The sight hit him harder than he expected. Something in the way the animal protected her stirred the ache he'd buried under years of silence. A flash of fur, a bark that never came back, a loss that had hollowed him out. And now this. This strange pair dropped into his solitude like a test he hadn't asked for. He knelt beside Rex, running a gentle hand along the dog's flank. The animal tensed, then relaxed under his touch. The fur was coarse but warm. "You're a good boy," Ethan murmured. "You did good." Rex's tail twitched once, a faint, grateful motion. The night crawled on. Ethan fed the fire, checked the girl's breathing, refilled the kettle. Outside, the storm refused to let up. The snow pressed against the windows, and the world beyond might as well have ceased to exist. At some point, near dawn, the wind began to die. The silence that followed was thick, almost holy. Ethan sat on the floor now, leaning against the edge of the old couch, too tired to move. His eyes burned with sleeplessness, but he didn't dare close them. He couldn't remember the last time he had cared this much whether someone lived or died. The first light seeped through the frost-rimmed glass when Leah finally stirred. Time 500. She opened her eyes slowly, eyes the color of storm clouds over ice. For a second, confusion flickered there, followed by a strange, unsettling calm. "Hey," Ethan said softly, crouching beside her. "You're safe now. You've been out a while." She blinked once, gaze flicking across the room. The fire, the walls, the rifle, the steaming kettle. Every detail registered with silent precision. Then she looked back at him. "Where's Rex?" Ethan nodded toward the hearth. "Right here. He's fine. Tough guy, your dog." She smiled faintly. A small, fragile thing. But her eyes never left him, studying his face with an intensity that made him uneasy. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, as if searching for it somewhere distant. "Leah," she said finally. "My name is Leah." "All right, Leah." He smiled, the expression rusty on his face. "I'm Ethan." For the first time in years, he heard warmth in his own voice. It startled him. Leah reached out, fingers brushing the back of his hand. A small, instinctive gesture. Her skin was cool, but the touch sent a quiet shock through him. A connection. Something simple. Human. Outside, the first rays of sun broke through the storm clouds, painting the snow in a soft gold. Inside, the fire burned steady, warm against the lingering chill. Ethan watched her watch the light, her head tilting like someone seeing it for the first time. Her eyes glimmered, not with fear, but with something close to curiosity. Calculation, maybe. He didn't notice it then, but in that moment, something in him shifted. The fortress he'd built out of isolation and guilt began to crack, just slightly, enough for warmth to seep through. And somewhere deep, inside that thaw, he felt it. The first pulse of something he thought had died with Max. Hope. The snow melted slowly that spring, reluctant to release its hold on the mountains. For weeks, the forest around Ethan's cabin remained wrapped in a half-winter silence, white patches clinging stubbornly to the ground, streams whispering as ice turned to water. But inside the small cabin, something had begun to thaw far deeper than the soil. Each morning followed a rhythm Ethan hadn't planned, but found himself needing. He would rise before dawn, feed the fire, brew coffee, then check on Leah and Rex. The girl woke easily, her hair always tangled, her eyes always calm. The dog, healthy again and strong, greeted the morning with a low rumble of contentment before circling the room like a silent guardian. Ethan taught Leah the little routines of mountain life: how to gather kindling, how to tell dry wood from damp, how to listen for the difference between wind and an approaching storm. She absorbed everything with quiet focus, repeating his instructions back with eerie accuracy. Once, after watching him split logs, she took the axe in both hands, too heavy for her size, and mimicked his stance perfectly. The log split clean down the center on her first try. Ethan stared, stunned, before laughing. "Well," he said, shaking his head, "remind me never to play cards against you." She didn't laugh often, but that time she did. A bright, quick sound that filled the room and made something inside him ache in the best way. It had been years since this cabin had heard laughter. Rex followed them everywhere, his black coat now sleek and shining. When Ethan worked outside, Rex patrolled the tree line, a dark shape gliding between pines. He no longer whimpered in pain. Whatever scars he carried beneath that fur, they didn't seem to slow him. Evenings were softer. Ethan cooked what he could: venison stew, trout from the creek, potatoes from storage, while Leah drew at the table with an old graphite pencil he'd found in a drawer. She filled pages with strange geometric patterns, spirals within grids, perfect symmetry that no 6-year-old should have been able to produce. Ethan assumed she had a gifted mind for patterns, maybe a photographic memory. He didn't question it. It was enough that she was smiling. At night, they sat by the fire while Rex lay stretched out on the rug, one paw occasionally twitching in dream. Ethan told stories, old police cases, safe versions, edited for a child. Leah listened without interrupting, always with that same patient gaze, as if memorizing every word. He found himself sleeping again. Real sleep, not the shallow, haunted kind that used to come in 1-hour bursts. The nightmares still came sometimes, flashes of noise and heat, the sharp metallic taste of adrenaline, but they faded quicker now, burned away by the laughter echoing in his head. The whiskey bottle on the counter gathered dust. He hadn't touched it in weeks. He started sketching again, something he hadn't done since before the war. At first, it was just idle drawings of the mountains. Then Leah and Rex began to appear in them. The girl's face half lit by firelight, the dog's outline against the snow. He caught himself smiling as he shaded the lines. One afternoon, a thunderstorm rolled through, heavy clouds dragging across the valley. Leah was sitting on the floor beside Rex, humming softly while she arranged pebbles in a pattern. Ethan was on the porch chopping wood when the thunder cracked overhead. The sharp, percussive boom hit him like a gunshot. The world blurred, his body stiffened. The axe slipped from his hand, hitting the snow. He felt it before he understood it. The rush of heat in his chest, the tightening in his throat. He was back in that alley again, gunfire echoing off concrete walls, the smell of cordite, his partner shouting. He couldn't breathe. He stumbled backward, hand clutching at his chest, his vision tunneled, the snow and sky spinning. "Ethan!" The voice was small but clear, cutting through the haze. Leah was suddenly in front of him, eyes wide with concern. She didn't panic. She didn't scream. She simply placed her small hand on his chest, right over his heart. "Breathe," she whispered. "Like this." She inhaled slowly, deliberately, her chest rising and falling. Ethan tried to follow, in, out. Her rhythm was steady, exact, like a metronome. He focused on the sound of her voice, the warmth of her hand through his shirt. Gradually, the pressure eased. The storm inside him receded. When he finally blinked his eyes open fully, she was still there. watching him, calm, unwavering. "You okay now?" she asked softly. Ethan swallowed hard, nodding. "Yeah, kid. Yeah, I'm okay." Rex pressed his head against Ethan's knee, whining low, as if scolding him for scaring them both. Ethan reached out and ruffled the dog's fur, forcing a shaky laugh. "Guess I'm the one who needs training, huh?" That night, when the storm passed and the air turned crisp again, they sat by the fire in silence. Ethan stared into the flames, still feeling the ghost of Leah's touch against his chest. How had she known exactly what to do? How did she remain so composed while he came apart? He wanted to ask, but some instinct told him not to. Instead, he just said, "Thank you." She looked up from her drawings, tilting her head slightly. "You don't have to thank me. You helped me first." He nodded, unsure what to say to that. The cabin crackled with quiet life, the sound of wood burning, Rex's soft snore, the scrape of pencil on paper. Outside, rain dripped from the eaves, rhythmic and patient. For the first time in years, Ethan realized he wasn't counting the minutes until the next nightmare. He wasn't waiting for the silence to crush him. He was simply existing, alive, present, surrounded by something resembling peace. Leah yawned, setting her pencil aside. "Will you tell me another story?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Sure. How about the one where a stubborn old cop gets outsmarted by a 6-year-old? She grinned, quick and genuine, before curling up beside Rex. He rested his arm on the back of the chair, watching them both. The firelight painted them in amber, their shadows stretching across the floor. Somewhere deep in his chest, a wall that had taken years to build began to crack and crumble. The storm outside had passed, but the thaw inside him had only begun. The morning broke cold and pale, a thin mist crawling through the forest, like the breath of something ancient. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the clearing behind his cabin, the air crisp enough to bite. Spring was still learning how to be warm up here, and each sunrise arrived quiet and tentative, as though afraid to wake the mountains. He was stacking firewood when he heard it, the low, heavy rustle of movement through the brush. Rex's silhouette emerged first, black against the dawn, his massive frame sleek with dew. He was dragging something. Ethan froze. When the shape came into view, his breath caught. A deer. Young, maybe 2 years old, its body limp, the snow beneath streaked with blood that still steamed in the morning chill. The kill was clean. One wound, deep and precise, straight through the throat. Rex released his grip, panting, his amber eyes gleaming with quiet pride. He wagged his tail once as though presenting a gift. Ethan knelt beside the carcass, examining the wound. It wasn't torn like a wolf's kill. It was surgical, efficient. "Jesus, Rex," he muttered under his breath. "How the hell did you do this?" Leah appeared behind him, barefoot in her oversized boots, her breath clouding in the cold air. "He was protecting us," she said simply, her voice calm. "The deer came too close." Ethan looked up, brow furrowing. "Deer don't attack, kid." Leah didn't answer. She stepped closer, kneeling beside the animal. The way she moved, steady, deliberate, made Ethan's pulse quicken. She placed her small hand on the deer's wound. "Hey," he started, reaching for her wrist, but she whispered something, soft, rhythmic. Unlike any language, he knew. The air around them seemed to shift, vibrating faintly. The blood stopped. Ethan blinked, leaning closer. The dark wound, still glistening seconds ago, began to close, the muscle knitting together like time running in reverse. Within moments, it was no longer bleeding. Only a faint scar remained, silver and smooth. He stumbled back, heart hammering. What the hell? Leah, what did you just do? She looked up at him, expression unreadable. It hurt, she said quietly. I wanted it to stop hurting. Ethan stared at her, words caught in his throat. The forest was utterly still. Even the birds had gone silent. He forced a breath, rubbed a hand over his face. Okay, he muttered. Okay, maybe the wound just clotted on its own. Happens sometimes. Shock reaction. But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't true. Rex stood beside Leah now, his head level with her shoulder. He didn't look dangerous, not exactly, but there was something in his posture, the way his muscles coiled and released, that made Ethan's stomach tighten. Later that morning, back at the cabin, the unease refused to fade. Leah hummed while helping with breakfast, the sound sweet but strangely precise, like a melody calculated rather than sung. Her movements were quick, efficient, almost too exact. Ethan caught himself studying her reflection in the window while she worked. She was standing by the counter, slicing apples with a dull knife, the sunlight soft against her hair. But in the reflection, something was off. She blinked once. Her reflection didn't. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, looked again. The reflection blinked now, just slightly out of sync. A trick of light, he told himself. Too many sleepless nights. After breakfast, Leah asked if they could walk to the stream. The air had warmed, the trees dripping with meltwater, and Rex bounded ahead through the brush like a shadow in motion. Leah followed, hopping between rocks, her laughter echoing off the valley pools. For a while, Ethan let himself enjoy the sound. It was rare and pure, and it cracked through his unease like sunlight through fog. Then she slipped. He saw it happen in slow motion, her boot catching on a root, her small body tumbling down the slope. He ran before she even hit the ground. Leah! She was already sitting up when he reached her, brushing dirt from her palms. I'm okay, she said quickly, too calmly. He crouched beside her, scanning for injuries. A scrape along her forearm caught his eye. Jagged, shallow, but clean. He reached for his pack. Let me see. I'll clean it. She hesitated. It's fine, Ethan. Humor me. She sighed and held it out. He froze again. The wound wasn't bleeding, not even a drop. Beneath the torn skin, something faintly silver glimmered, like mercury, or light reflecting off metal beneath flesh. He stared, every nerve in his body going cold. What is that? Leah drew her arm back quickly, pulling her sleeve down. It doesn't hurt, she said softly, almost pleading. Please don't be scared. But Ethan was scared. Not of her exactly, of what he didn't understand. He felt the edges of his world tilting, the steady rules of life and body slipping into something foreign. Leah, he said, forcing his voice steady, I need to know what's going on. Are you hurt somewhere else? Did someone do something to you? She shook her head, eyes wide, impossibly calm. You saved me. That's all that matters. And then she walked ahead, toward the clearing where Rex waited, as if nothing had happened. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The fire burned low, shadows crawling up the cabin walls. He sat at the table, staring at the journal where Leah's drawings filled page after page. Spirals, grids, lines intersecting with mathematical perfection. None of it random. He turned the pages slowly, the flickering light casting strange patterns over her sketches. They looked like blueprints. But for what? He couldn't tell. When he finally dozed off in the chair, the dreams came. He was back in the snow, but the forest was different. Metallic, gleaming under a red sky. Beneath the drifts lay not roots or stones, but cables, pulsing faintly like veins. He could hear a hum deep underground, rhythmic and cold, like a mechanical heartbeat. Shapes moved beneath the surface, human silhouettes made of light and wire. He knelt, brushing the snow away, and beneath it saw the reflection of his own face, split open to reveal circuits glowing faint blue beneath his skin. He jolted awake with a gasp, chest slick with sweat. The fire had gone out. The cabin was dark except for the faint silver light coming from the corner. Leah was sitting there, cross-legged beside Rex, her eyes open, fixed on the dying embers. She wasn't blinking. Ethan's throat went dry. "Leah?" She turned slowly, her expression soft, almost tender. "You had a bad dream," she said. "It's okay now." And when she smiled, it was both the most human and the most unearthly thing he had ever seen. The cabin was quiet, except for the low, rhythmic hum of the generator outside, a sound that filled the silence the way breathing fills a chest. It was close to midnight. The world beyond the walls had gone dark, wrapped in a moonless calm that felt too heavy, too still. Ethan Cole sat at the kitchen table, the lamplight casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Leah was asleep in the loft, her breathing soft and steady, the faint rhythm of it drifting through the boards above. Rex lay curled at the base of the stairs, his body a shadow among shadows, tail twitching occasionally as if chasing something in a dream. Ethan couldn't sleep. Not tonight. Not after what he'd seen that morning. That flash of silver beneath her skin replayed in his mind, over and over. It wasn't a trick of the light. He knew that now. It was real. Something was inside her, something that didn't belong in a child. He rubbed a hand over his face, exhaustion sitting heavy on his shoulders. He'd promised himself not to pry, not to question too soon. But the silence between them was starting to feel like a lie he was telling himself. Slowly, quietly, he rose and made his way to the loft. Each step creaked under his boots. Leah was curled beneath a quilt, one arm draped loosely over Rex's neck. The firelight flickered against her pale skin, turning her hair to copper. She looked peaceful, impossibly fragile. For a long moment, Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to break that peace, but the questions pressing against his ribs wouldn't let him rest. He knelt beside her, careful not to wake her, and gently pulled the quilt down to her shoulders. His hand trembled as he brushed her hair aside. There, just beneath the curve of her collarbone, he saw it again, a faint rectangular shape, almost invisible under the skin. He reached for his flashlight, angling the beam low. The shape sharpened. It wasn't just a scar. It was a barcode. Tiny lines etched in precise symmetry, like the mark on a product in a store. And beside it, smaller still, a string of numbers. Echo 9. Ethan froze, breath catching in his throat. His mind spun through possibilities. Tattoo, burn, medical mark, but none of them fit. It was too deliberate, too sterile. He stumbled back from the bed, the light trembling in his hand. "What the hell are you, kid?" he whispered. Rex's head lifted slightly, eyes catching the beam. He didn't growl, just stared, unblinking, as if he knew. Ethan forced himself to move. He went downstairs, sat at the table, and flipped open his old laptop. The screen's glow felt harsh against the dark. The satellite connection was slow, but it worked. Barely. He typed in the words that now burned in his mind. Barcode under skin child project Echo. For a while, nothing. Then, slowly, a list of links appeared, most dead, some redacted. A few led to conspiracy forums, the kind he used to scoff at. But one looked different. A government memo leaked years ago, buried under layers of disinformation. He clicked. The document was grainy, partially censored, the text fractured, but the words that remained were enough. Project Echo. Classified initiative under the Department of Advanced Biointelligence. Objective: hybridization of neural DNA between human subjects and synthetic components for enhanced cognition and empathy mapping. Time Lawson 600 months. Phase 3 prototypes designated Echo 1 through Echo 12. Each subject paired with a corresponding animal unit, Canis familiaris variant, genetically enhanced for cognitive and sensory synchronization. Ethan's pulse quickened. He scrolled further, eyes scanning line after line. Most of it was blacked out, but then a fragment appeared. Echo 9 exhibited unprecedented emotional adaptation. Subject demonstrated accelerated learning, empathy mirroring, and memory retention. Animal Unit RX9 showed linked physiological responses and protective instincts. Project terminated following containment breach. Presumed casualties: all. RX9. He stared at the name until his vision blurred. Rex. No, his voice cracked. He stumbled to the shelf, grabbed the DNA kit he'd once used to track animal genetics during a wildlife survey. His hands shook as he set it up. Swabs, vials, the portable reader he hadn't touched in years. He told himself it was to prove the documents wrong, to find something normal, something human. When the results appeared on screen, his stomach dropped. Leah's sample showed sequences he didn't recognize, patterns too symmetrical, too exact, code where there shouldn't be code, synthetic strands woven between organic DNA. And in the analysis window, the designation appeared: Homo sapiens hybridus. Project Echo 9. He swabbed Rex next, his breath shallow, chest tight. The reader whirred, blinked, and printed a line of text that made him feel sick. Canis lupus familiaris. Genetic modification. Cognitive augmentation. Lush RX9. For a long moment, he just stared at the screen. The generator's hum outside seemed louder now, steady and cruel, like the heartbeat of a machine that refused to stop. He pushed the chair back, pacing across the room, hands gripping his hair. Timed chunks. You've got to be kidding me, he whispered. You're telling me she's... What? A science experiment? A weapon? The words tasted like rust. He looked up toward the loft. The faint light flickered across the wood beams. He could still hear her breathing. That soft, human sound. That sound he'd begun to depend on. He sank to his knees, every muscle shaking. His mind warred with itself, logic screaming at him to accept what the data showed, heart refusing to believe it. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a machine. She was the little girl who laughed at his bad jokes, who drew patterns while humming to the fire, who had stopped him from drowning in his own nightmares. He buried his face in his hands, a sound breaking from his chest. Half sob, half curse. She's just a kid, he muttered. Just a kid. But the numbers on the screen didn't care. The barcode didn't lie. His gaze fell on the small pile of Leah's drawings scattered across the table. Spirals and grids and perfect lines. Looking closer now, he realized they weren't random at all. They mirrored the neural maps displayed in the documents. She had been reconstructing them from memory. He reached for one page, tracing the pencil lines with a trembling finger. Somewhere between horror and awe, A single thought cut through the noise. She didn't even know what she was. The tears came quietly, the way rain begins, unnoticed until it's already there. He looked toward the ceiling again, whispering to the shadows, "You deserved a mother, not a mission." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and thawing earth. Rex stirred, lifting his head to stare at Ethan, as if to remind him that love, however unnatural, was still real. Ethan wiped his face with the back of his hand. Time 400 miles. The data on the screen still glowed, cold and absolute. But when he finally stood, it was with the slow, aching certainty of a man who knew he couldn't turn away. Not from her, not now. Whatever she was made for, she was his. The night air carried a tension Ethan could feel in his bones. It wasn't just the wind or the silence that had settled over the valley. It was something deeper, a pressure in the atmosphere that made the hair on his arms rise. Even Rex, usually calm and alert, paced near the cabin door, low growls vibrating through his chest. Leah stood by the window, her small frame lit by the moonlight spilling through the glass. Her eyes, normally gray, shimmered faintly, a pale blue pulse that matched the rhythmic hum of the generator outside. Ethan had stopped asking questions about the strange things she did. He'd already read the documents. He already knew what she was supposed to be. But watching her now, the glow reflected in the glass, the stillness in her face, something primal in him whispered, "Run." "Leah," he said quietly, pulling on his jacket, "we need to move." She didn't turn. "They're coming." The words froze him mid-step. "What do you mean?" Her gaze stayed on the horizon, where the tree line blurred into shadow. 3 aircraft, southeast approach, altitude 200 feet. Heat signatures, 12 men, 4 drones. Ethan's breath caught. He didn't ask how she knew. Within seconds, the distant thrum of rotor blades began to cut through the night. "Jesus," he muttered. "They found us." He ran to the back room, grabbed the emergency duffel from the closet, canned food, ammo, first aid, and slung it over his shoulder. His mind raced through options. The old mining tunnels to the west were too unstable. The river crossing was iced over. There was nowhere truly safe. "Leah, we've got to get into the forest. Now." She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw the fear beneath her calm. "If they find me," she whispered, voice trembling, "they'll erase me." Ethan knelt, gripping her shoulders. "Listen to me. No one's erasing you. Not while I'm breathing, you hear me?" She nodded once, but her eyes flicked toward the sky again, glowing brighter. "They're scanning for heat signatures. We have to go through the creek. The water will hide us." He stared at her, momentarily stunned by her precision. Then he grabbed her hand. "Let's move." They stepped into the cold, the door slamming behind them. The world outside was an ocean of wind and snowmelt. The moon hid behind clouds, casting everything in dull silver. Ethan led the way down the slope toward the frozen creek bed, boots crunching in mud and ice. The distant roar of the helicopters grew louder, a low, rolling thunder. Searchlights swept across the valley in long, searching arcs, painting the forest in alternating darkness and glare. "Rex!" Ethan hissed. The dog trotted close, muscles taut, every sense alive. Above them, a drone whirred, a small black silhouette cutting through the mist. It hovered, lens glinting red. "Get down!" Ethan pulled Leah into the shadow of a fallen log. The drone pivoted, scanning the area, its camera rotating with insect-like precision. Rex moved before Ethan could stop him. A blur of muscle and motion, the dog leapt into the air, jaws clamping onto the drone with a metallic crunch. Sparks exploded against his fur as he slammed it to the ground, tearing it apart in seconds. The forest went silent again, but only for a moment. The drone's red light flickered, broadcasting its final transmission. From above, the nearest helicopter banked, hard, turning toward their position. "Damn it!" Ethan grabbed Leah's arm. "They've got our location! Move!" They sprinted through the trees, Rex beside them, smoke rising faintly from his coat. The beam of a searchlight swept across the forest, cutting through branches like a blade. The sound of boots followed, men shouting over radios, their voices mechanical through helmets. Subject Echo 9 confirmed in Quadrant 4. Containment protocol authorized. Ethan's stomach twisted at the words. Subject, not child. He glanced back. The men moved with military precision, rifles raised, white thermal suits glowing under their own spotlights. They weren't here to rescue anyone. They were here to reclaim property. Branches slapped against Ethan's face as he pushed forward. Leah stumbled once, catching herself on a rock. She was trembling but kept running, her hand locked in his. "Ethan!" she gasped. "I can stop them!" "No!" he barked. "You keep your head down and follow me." "But I can—" "Leah!" He stopped, turning to face her. The desperation in his voice made her flinch. "You don't have to fight anymore, okay? You're not their experiment. You're my kid, and I'm not losing you." For a moment, she just stared at him, eyes wide and wet. Then she nodded, jaw trembling. "Okay." They reached the creek, a shallow stretch of icy water that shimmered faintly under the searchlights. Ethan plunged in first, the freezing current slicing through his jeans like glass. He turned, pulling Leah in after him. Rex followed silently, waiting beside them. The current muffled their heat signatures, just as Leah had predicted. The searchlights passed over once, twice, then moved on. For a few precious seconds, they were invisible. Ethan crouched behind a cluster of rocks, heart pounding in his throat. He could hear the rotors above, the static chatter of the agents' radios. They were close, too close. Beside him, Leah's eyes still glowed faintly, scanning the air. Her voice came out soft but certain. "They're triangulating signals from the wrecked drone. We have maybe 5 minutes before they circle back." Ethan swallowed hard. He'd seen men hunted before, but never like this. Not by machines, not by ghosts in human shape. "We'll make for the ridge," he said. "Old Ranger Trail cuts west to the canyon, too narrow for their vehicles." As he spoke, the ground trembled slightly, the low vibration of the helicopters looping back. Leah leaned closer. "They won't stop, Ethan." Her voice was barely audible over the water. "Even if they find me dead, they'll take me apart to see what made me different." He looked at her then, really looked. The silver light in her eyes, the frost clinging to her lashes, the quiet fear she was trying to hide. "Then they'll have to go through me first," he said. The words came out calm, steady, absolute, a soldier's promise. Leah blinked slowly, and for a heartbeat, the glow in her eyes softened. She reached out, touching his cheek. "You always say things like that," she whispered. "Like you were made to protect." Ethan forced a small smile. "Maybe I was." Rex barked once. Low, warning. The lights were coming back. "Go," Ethan said, grabbing Leah's hand. "We move now." They ran again, through trees and fog and water, 3 shadows against the silver dawn. Behind them, the valley erupted with searchlights and the echo of machines. But ahead, the mountains waited, wild, cold, and infinite. And as Ethan pushed forward, the sound of Leah's voice followed him through the wind. "They'll never understand what we are." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because whatever she was, human, machine, miracle, she was his. And he would burn the whole damn world before letting them take her. Dawn bled across the Wyoming sky in shades of gray and fire. The mountains looked carved from steel, the forest below wrapped in mist that swallowed sound and color alike. Ethan Cole's truck rattled down the frost-slick road, engine groaning in protest. Leah sat beside him, silent, wrapped in his old army jacket. Rex lay in the back seat, eyes fixed on the window, muscles tense. They'd been driving for hours. No plan, no map, just instinct. Every passing mile felt stolen from the inevitable. When the radio crackled to life with a voice from another era, Ethan almost didn't believe it. "Cole, that you?" He froze, fingers tightening on the steering wheel. "Harris?" "Yeah," came the voice, half static, half disbelief. "Jesus, Ethan, I thought you dropped off the grid for good." Ethan exhaled, a small thread of hope piercing through exhaustion. Deputy Mark Harris, his old partner back when law enforcement had still meant something. A man who'd once pulled him out of a firefight. A man he'd trusted. "Listen," Ethan said, voice rough. "I need help. It's bad." "Where are you?" Ethan hesitated, then gave the location. "Heading toward the ranger station by Stillwater Pass. I'll meet you there." The radio clicked off. Beside him, Leah looked up, worry flickering in her eyes. "You trust him?" "I used to," Ethan said. "He's one of the good ones." But as the cabin of the old truck filled with silence again, even he didn't sound convinced. The ranger station sat on a ridge overlooking the valley. A squat log structure with an old radio tower and a faded flag snapping weakly in the wind. When Ethan pulled in, Harris was already outside, leaning against his cruiser, coffee steaming in his hand. He looked older, more gray in the beard, more weight behind the eyes. But that same easy smile spread across his face when he saw Ethan step out. "Damn, Cole," Harris said, shaking his head. "You look like you've wrestled a bear." Ethan almost smiled. "Been that kind of month." His gaze flicked to Leah as she climbed out of the truck, Rex at her side, silent and alert. Harris's smile faltered for a heartbeat. Not much, but enough for Ethan to catch it. "This her?" "She's a kid," Ethan said, his tone sharp, protective. "That's all you need to know." Harris nodded slowly, raising his palms. "Easy, partner. Just trying to understand what we're dealing with. You look like you've been running from something." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Not something. Someone. Government people. Black helicopters, drones, you name it. They're hunting her like she's—" He stopped himself. "We just need shelter, food, maybe a phone line that isn't being monitored." Harris studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll get it. Come inside. Warm up first." The heat from the station's wood stove hit like a wave. The place smelled of coffee and old paper. Maps were pinned across the walls, wildlife charts curling at the corners. It felt almost safe. Too safe. Harris poured them coffee while Leah sat near the fire, Rex stretched across her lap. The dog's breathing was steady, his head rising and falling with each of her gentle strokes. "So," Harris said quietly, leaning against the counter. "You gonna tell me what's really going on, Ethan?" Ethan hesitated, staring into the mug. The truth was poison, but lies had killed better men. "They say she's dangerous, but I've seen danger, Mark. She's not it. Time 800 PEMs. Harris's eyes softened. "You always had a thing for lost causes." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess I never learned." But as he lifted his mug, he noticed the faintest glint of movement, Harris's hand sliding toward the radio switch by the desk. just a flicker of hesitation before his thumb pressed transmit. "Mark?" Ethan's voice dropped, sharp and warning. Harris froze. "Jesus, Ethan," he said quietly, not looking up. "You don't understand. They came to me first. Said you were harboring a classified subject. They showed pictures, reports." Ethan slammed the mug down. "You called them?" "I had to. They said—" "Damn it, Mark!" Rex's head shot up, ears pricked. Leah's breath caught. Outside, the sound came, the low thunder of engines, the crunch of tires on gravel. Ethan turned to the window. Black SUVs. Men in white tactical suits spilling out like ghosts. He spun toward Leah. "Run!" But it was too late. The glass shattered inward, a dart streaking through the air. Rex lunged in front of her, teeth bared. The dart hit his shoulder. He growled once, stumbled, then crumpled against the floorboards. "Rex!" Leah screamed, dropping to her knees. Another dart hit the wall inches from Ethan's head. He grabbed the shotgun from the rack by the door, firing once, the blast ripping through the front window. The agents dropped behind cover, shouting commands through radios. "Echo 9 visual confirmed. Containment protocol," Harris shouted over the chaos. "Ethan, stop. They're not here to kill her." "You don't know what they're here for," Ethan roared. He fired again, the recoil slamming into his shoulder. Smoke filled the air, mingled with the smell of burning wood. He grabbed Leah, shoving her toward the back exit. "Go! Don't look back!" But she didn't move. She was staring at Rex, her small hands shaking. "He's not breathing." Ethan turned, and in that split second, another dart found her neck. She gasped, eyes wide with shock, reaching for him as her knees buckled. "No!" He caught her before she hit the ground, pulling the dart free, helpless against the chemical stench. Her pupils dilated, her body trembling in his arms. "Stay with me, Leah, come on. Stay with me." Her voice came out faint, slurred, fading. "Ethan, I'm here," he said, tears stinging his eyes. "I'm right here." Her fingers brushed his cheek once before going limp. Rex lay motionless nearby, his massive body rising only faintly, breath shallow. Ethan's vision blurred. The sound of boots closed in. An agent burst through the door, shouting, "Get down!" Ethan didn't hear him. The shotgun slipped from his hands. He was dragged backward, forced to the ground, arms wrenched behind him. Zip ties bit into his wrists. Through the chaos, through the smoke, he saw them. Two men in helmets lifting Leah's body, carrying her toward the waiting trucks. Her head lolled against her shoulder, golden hair falling over her face. "Leah!" he thrashed, his voice cracking, raw and wild. "Don't you touch her!" Another strike, the butt of a rifle against his ribs, sent him collapsing. The last thing he saw, before blacking out, was Rex being hauled onto a stretcher, limp and silent. And for a moment, it wasn't Leah he saw being taken away. It was Max, his old K9, bleeding out on a dirty street while he screamed for help that never came. The same helplessness, the same loss. When Ethan came to, the station was half empty, the air heavy with smoke and betrayal. His wrists burned from the ties he'd snapped in rage. His ribs ached. But his mind was clear. They'd taken her, again. He staggered to his feet, found Harris standing in the corner, face pale. "You shouldn't have done that," Ethan said, voice low and dangerous. Harris swallowed hard. "I didn't know they'd—" Ethan didn't wait to hear the rest. He grabbed the man's radio, smashed it against the wall, and walked out into the morning light. Blood streaked his sleeve. His breath came ragged but steady. The mountains loomed in the distance, cold and merciless. Somewhere out there, they were taking Leah and Rex away. He started walking. Each step was a vow. He had failed before, A partner, a brother, a dog. But not this time. This time, he'd burn the world if he had to. The facility slept beneath the mountain like a buried heartbeat, silent, cold, and endless. From the outside, it was nothing more than a service tunnel sealed by concrete and snowdrift, a remnant of the Cold War. But inside, light pulsed faintly behind reinforced glass, and the hum of machinery whispered of something still alive. Ethan Cole crept through the vent shaft, his breath visible in the freezing air. His clothes were torn from the climb, his ribs bruised from the fight at the ranger station. But the pain no longer mattered. Every step was driven by one thought, one word burning behind his eyes. Leah. The vents opened above a sterile corridor. He dropped silently, landing on metal grating with the precision of an old soldier. The air smelled of disinfectant and ozone. He could hear voices echoing faintly down the hall, clipped, professional tones of scientists, guards, men who thought they were gods playing with the threads of creation. He moved fast, hugging the walls. His fingers brushed over a sign. Biocontainment Level 3. Authorized personnel only. The doors opened with a hiss. What lay beyond froze him where he stood. Rows upon rows of glass pods stretched across a cavernous room. Each one glowed faintly blue, mist curling around their bases. Inside them floated children, or the shape of children, suspended in viscous fluid, their small hands curled, eyes closed. Some were incomplete. Some were perfect, save for the cold lifelessness of their still faces. Labels marked each one. Echo 1, Echo 2, Echo 3. All the way to Echo 12. Ethan's stomach turned. He walked between them, the hum of machines filling the silence. Tiny faces, trapped in glass. Failed attempts, discarded dreams. Then he saw her. Echo 9. Status: active. Her pod was larger, cables running from the base into the wall. The screen beside it showed a faint heartbeat. Leah's hair floated like a halo, her skin pale under the sterile light. Leah. His voice cracked as he pressed a trembling hand to the glass. I'm here, kid. I'm here. A voice spoke behind him, soft and precise. You shouldn't be. Ethan spun around, rifle raised. The woman who stepped into view wasn't wearing body armor, just a lab coat and a haunted expression. Her hair was silver, tied neatly back, and her eyes were sharp but tired. Dr. Nora Kessler, Ethan said, his tone bitter. You built her. The woman nodded once. I created her, she corrected gently. Built would be an oversimplification. You made her like this? Ethan demanded. You made them. Kessler glanced toward the rows of pods. I tried to make something better, smarter, stronger, a species that could feel without the weakness that comes with it. But it turns out, her voice cracked faintly, you can't program a soul. Ethan took a step closer, gun trembling in his grip. You left her to die in a blizzard. She was never supposed to leave this place, Kessler said. Echo 9 wasn't meant for the field. She malfunctioned. She felt compassion, attachment, grief. She began to protect her canine partner like a sibling. When the breach happened, we assumed they were lost. Ethan's jaw tightened. She's not a malfunction. She wasn't meant to feel, Kessler said quietly. You gave her that. The words hit him harder than a bullet. The alarms began before he could respond. A low wail that built into a scream of sirens and flashing red lights. Kessler's head snapped toward the door. They've detected your intrusion. You don't have much time. I'm not leaving without her. Kessler hesitated, then walked to the control panel beside Leah's pod. Her hands moved swiftly, entering codes Ethan couldn't read. She's not stable, she warned. Removing her now could kill her. Ethan's voice was steady. then we'll die together. Steam hissed as the pod depressurized. The fluid drained away, and Leah's small body slumped against the glass. Ethan moved forward, catching her as it opened, her skin cold as marble. For a terrifying moment, she didn't move. Then her eyes flickered open, silver in the red light of the alarm. "Ethan, I've got you," he whispered, holding her close. Kessler's voice was urgent now. "You don't understand. She's still linked to the network." The others, the pods around them, began to stir. One by one, the failed prototypes opened their eyes, some clouded, some hollow. Fingers twitched against glass, systems rebooting. The facility trembled with power surges. "What's happening?" Ethan shouted. Kessler backed away, horror creeping into her face. "The system's waking the dormant units. It's trying to overwrite her memory. Bring her back under control." Leah stirred weakly in Ethan's arms, voice small but clear. "No, I won't go back." Her eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the emergency lights. Sparks crackled along the control panels. The glass pods began to fracture, thin cracks spreading like spiderwebs. Ethan looked to Kessler. "Shut it down." "I can't." Leah turned her head toward Ethan, her lips trembling. "You taught me love," she whispered. "That's why I'm real." Something in the air shifted, a pulse, deep and resonant, rippling through the lab. The lights exploded in a shower of sparks. Power surged through the walls. The cryopods shattered, fluid spilling across the floor like melted ice. "Run!" Kessler shouted. Ethan pulled Leah close and sprinted toward the exit. Behind them, alarms merged into chaos. Electricity crackling, machines screaming. Rex appeared from the corridor, staggering but alive, eyes wild with adrenaline. He lunged ahead, clearing the path. The hallway erupted in gunfire as armed guards poured in. Bullets sparked against the walls. Ethan returned fire, each shot precise and desperate. Kessler ran behind them, her voice echoing through the chaos. "There's an emergency tunnel down the east wing!" They burst into a snowstorm. The world outside a blur of white and red. Helicopters roared overhead, floodlights slicing through the smoke. Explosions shook the ground as the facility began to collapse from within. Ethan shielded Leah with his body, Rex circling protectively. "Go!" Kessler shouted from behind, waving them toward the tree line. "She's your responsibility now." Then the mountain roared, a blast of fire and debris swallowing the entrance, cutting them off. Ethan didn't stop. He kept running, Leah in his arms, Rex bounding beside him through the storm. Behind them, the facility that had created her, the tomb of her brothers and sisters, collapsed into itself, vanishing beneath the snow. They didn't look back. Only when the noise faded into distant thunder did Ethan finally stop, dropping to his knees in the snow. Leah stirred weakly, her breath fogging the cold air. "I'm here," he whispered, voice breaking. "You're safe." Her hand found his cheek. "No one is safe," she said softly. "But we're free." He pulled her close, the snow falling thick around them, covering the ruins, the scars, the truth. Above, the storm swallowed the last plume of smoke, leaving only silence. The cost of freedom was everything. The storm returned with vengeance. Wind screamed through the valley, shredding trees and swallowing sound. Snow erased all traces of life. Through the blinding white, 3 figures moved, a man, a child, and a wolf, fighting both the storm and fate. Ethan Cole climbed the ridge, Leah limp in his arms, Rex limping beside them. Each breath tore from his chest in icy bursts. Below, the thrum of helicopters echoed. The agents were closing in. "Almost there," he gasped. Leah stirred weakly, skin burning hot. Her eyes flickered with unstable silver light. "It's inside me," she whispered. "It's breaking." Ethan crouched behind a fallen tree, panic rising. Steam rose where snow touched her skin. What's happening? My systems. They weren't built for this. For feeling so much. She clutched her chest. They're burning. Ethan's heart sank. We'll fix this. We'll find Kessler. She's gone, Leah murmured. And even if she weren't, she couldn't fix what I've become. Rex barked. Danger. Green scopes glinted through the trees. Agents spread out below, methodical. Ethan's instincts screamed, move, survive. But this wasn't a war he could win. Ethan, Leah whispered, if they find me, they'll take you too. Not happening. I can't stop what's inside me. If I lose control, then I'll hold on tighter, he said fiercely. Her eyes shimmered like tears. A gunshot cracked through the blizzard. Snow exploded at Ethan's feet. He pulled Leah behind a boulder and fired back. Rex lunged into the storm, a blur of black fur and fury. Bullets flashed. Blood stained the snow. Still, Rex fought on, unstoppable, loyal to the end. Rex, no! Ethan shouted, but the wind stole his voice. Then Rex staggered. A tranquilizer dart stuck in his flank, blue fluid spreading. Ethan ran to him through gunfire. Rex collapsed, chest heaving. Stay with me, boy, Ethan begged. Leah crawled toward him, her heat melting snow beneath her palms. She stroked Rex's fur, whispering softly. The glow in her eyes dimmed. Rex's tail twitched once, then stilled. Silence fell. Ethan bowed his head, snow melting on his face. Leah's tears hissed as they hit the ground. He saved us, she said. Ethan couldn't speak. The storm howled, but all sound was gone. Then Leah touched his hand. Ethan, you have to let me go. No. They'll find us. They'll use me again. I can't let that happen. You're my family, he said. We go together. I don't want to go without you. Then don't. She smiled faintly, the same shy smile that once broke through his walls. You taught me what love feels like. That's enough. The agents appeared through the snow, ghost-like shapes. Leah turned toward them, light building behind her eyes. I can stop them, she whispered, but I won't survive it. Leah, Ethan choked. Thank you, she said softly, for giving me something real. She stepped forward. Light exploded from her body, white hot, pure, blinding. The snow melted in a perfect circle. Heat rippled outward, turning the storm into fire. Ethan screamed her name. Leah! Then everything went still. Snow fell again, soft and slow, covering wreckage and blood and the wolf that had loved them both. Ethan knelt in silence, holding Rex's still body. You did good, boy, he whispered. You did real good. The blizzard carried his sobs away into the mountains. When morning came, the world was quiet, untouched. Ethan awoke beneath a pale, golden sky. The helicopters lay broken, the facility destroyed, smoke rising from the ruins. He searched the clearing. No voices, no footsteps. Leah, he whispered. In the snow ahead, something glimmered. He brushed it free, a small metal tag marked Echo 9. Beside it lay Rex's collar. Rex, protector. Ethan held them to his chest, eyes closed. Laughter echoed faintly in his mind. A fire crackling. A child's voice asking, Do you think snow remembers where it falls? They were gone. Yet the world felt lighter. The snow fell softly, as if trying to heal the wounds they'd left. Months later, the valley thawed. Streams ran silver down the slopes, and the forest breathed again. The cabin stood rebuilt, sunlight spilling through its open windows. Ethan sat on the porch, coffee steaming in a dented mug. The scars on his hands had faded, The lines on his face had softened. A bark sounded behind him. Not Rex's deep growl, but a younger, brighter sound. He turned. 3 shepherds bounded through the clearing, tails high, vests marked Therapy Companion Unit. Ethan smiled faintly. He'd built something new here, a sanctuary for those like him, soldiers carrying ghosts in their eyes, a place to begin again. He'd seen it firsthand, the way a dog's quiet presence could anchor someone on the edge. It's time for 100 mums. The way unconditional love could pull a soul back from the brink. That was what Leah had taught him, what Rex had embodied. Not miracles, just connection. He'd started calling it the Echo Program. It was his way of honoring them both, not as failed experiments or lost creations, but as proof that even in the coldest designs of man, love could bloom where it wasn't meant to exist. He still kept the barcode tag and Rex's collar on the wall above the fireplace. 2 small reminders of the impossible bond that had remade him. Some nights, when the wind came down from the mountains, he swore he could still hear her voice, faint, musical, asking him to tell another story before bed. And sometimes, when the moonlight hit the window just right, he thought he saw a shadow move past the tree line, the familiar shape of a girl and her guardian, walking side by side through the snow. That evening, the air was unseasonably cold for spring. The sun was setting, streaking the sky in gold and violet. Ethan was stacking wood beside the cabin when he heard the crunch of footsteps behind him. Soft, careful, hesitant. He turned. At first, he thought the light was playing tricks on him. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, small and barefoot, the snow melting where her feet touched. Her hair shimmered gold in the dusk, and in her hand, something gleamed. A fragment of metal, shaped like a tag. Ethan froze. His breath caught in his throat. The girl stepped closer. Her eyes, silver gray, met his. They held the same calm, curious light that had once disarmed him completely. "Dad?" she whispered. The word broke him. He didn't move at first, afraid that if he blinked, she'd vanish. But then she smiled. That same small, perfect smile, and the tears came before he could stop them. He dropped the log, stumbling forward, his voice shaking. "Leah?" She tilted her head, the way she used to when learning a new word. "I remembered you," she said softly. "You said love makes us real." The world around them blurred, the snow, the air, even the sound of the river, until there was nothing left but her voice. Ethan reached out, his calloused hand trembling as it brushed her cheek. She was warm, impossibly warm, but her skin shimmered faintly under his touch, as if the light itself couldn't decide if she belonged to this world or another. Behind her, from the depths of the forest, came a sound, low, distant, but unmistakable. A bark. Ethan's heart clenched. He looked toward the trees. The shadows moved, briefly forming the outline of a great black wolf before fading back into mist. When he looked at Leah again, she was smiling through tears of her own. He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if the world might try to take her again. The snow began to fall, gentle, forgiving, blanketing the earth in quiet grace. No words were left to say. Because in that moment, Ethan understood something simple and eternal. Love doesn't care what we're made of, flesh, bone, or code. It only knows that we belong to the ones who see us, who stay, who never stop believing. And as the storm clouds parted, sunlight spilled over the mountains once more. Ethan Cole stood in the clearing, a father again, a soldier finally at peace. Leah leaned into his side, her hand small in his, and somewhere deep in the forest, A single bark echoed, clear and bright. The wind carried it over the valley like a benediction. Rex was watching, and the world, at last, was whole again. You know, stories like this remind us why dogs, especially German shepherds, hold such a special place in our hearts. Their loyalty doesn't come from training or command. It's something deeper, something born from trust. They stand by us when no one else does, see the best in us when we've forgotten how. Maybe that's what makes them so extraordinary. The way they love without judgment, without conditions. They don't care who we were yesterday, only who we are to them right now. If this story touched you, and you'd like to build that same kind of connection with your own dog, there's a wonderful resource I've been exploring lately. It's a gentle guide to understanding your dog's heart a little better. You can check it out if you'd like. No pressure. Just something I think you'd truly enjoy. Because at the end of the day, it's not about obedience or perfection. It's about love, trust, and the quiet companionship that reminds us we're never really alone.